allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd like to welcome everyone back out this week. Future board meetings, June 14th and 28th and July 12th, all at 6 o'clock here at the administration building. We're going to run things a little differently tonight than what a normal meeting. We covered most of that the last meeting on all of our public recognition, things like that, and reports. So we're just going to jump into why we're here. So under unfinished business, the item on the agenda is for the board to hold a project and preliminary hearing on this proposed project. If you are interested in speaking at the time of the hearing, please make sure you have signed in the sign-in sheet, which should include your name and address. After a presentation by the administration and its advisors, there will be an opportunity for the public to make comments about the project. At the hearing, we will ask each person to limit their comments to about 3 minutes or so, and the topic be limited to the proposed project under consideration. The notice of this preliminary determination hearing was published as legally required on May 24th, 2022 in the Wabash Plain Dealer. At this time, I will ask Mr. Kiefaber to explain the purpose of this hearing.
Pursuant to the Indiana Code 20-26-7-37, before a school corporation may spend more than $1 million to build, repair, or alter a school building that will be financed by a lease or bonds, it must hold a public hearing at which explanations of the potential value of the project to the school corporation and community are given. Similarly, as per Indiana Code 6-1.1-20-3.5, a school corporation must hold 2 public hearings and adopt a resolution to preliminarily determine to issue bonds or enter a lease for a project which has a total project cost in excess of a non-controlled project. These public hearings and the adoption of the resolutions are the very beginning of the legal process. These resolutions are under consideration this evening to establish the maximum financial terms for the proposed project.
Thank you. We will now hear from Mr. Kiefaber and others about the process of determining and communicating the project to the community and the need for the project, the history and process to this point, how the proposed project meets the needs as previously described.
Thank you, Mr. Daisy. So as you recall, and probably heard it many, many times, our logo is Dream Big, Work Hard. So this slide presentation includes additional information from the questions and or comments from the meeting from last Tuesday relating to the proposed project. Just want to go over quickly here the priorities of our district strategic plan. That plan, and we'll give you the dates later, but of course, priority 1 was student achievement, develop and enhance quality programs to improve student achievement. Priority number 2, recruitment and retention, attract and retain students to increase enrollment. Priority number 3, financial, ensure fiscal responsibility and stability. And priority number 4, facilities and technology, provide safe and efficient learning environments. And priority number 4, we call it strategic plan number 4, and that actually is one that we've been discussing quite a bit. So there are actually a lot of details underneath the strategic plan number 4, but the objective is the one that we're really considering, and that is the objective number 4.1, optimize utilization and determine feasibility of current facilities or other possibilities. So communication, and this is what Mr. Daisy was reading about, how do we get to this point? So the communication. So in 2019, this started with having a strategic plan session, and that was a work session. Work sessions are open to the public, and that was on April 17, 2019. Seems like a long time ago, it was pre-COVID. And then December 3rd through the 19th, we had presentations to all of our building level staff. We went to the schools. And then starting in 2020, and if you recall, 2020, March 13th was that big day of COVID, but right before that, we actually had public strategic plan presentations. Of course, we didn't know anything about COVID at that time, but we had one at Northfield for the community, and then we had one at Southwood for the community also. We continued on. You can see it was a little bit later. A lot of things changed from March 13th. We shut down, different things happened, but we started working back into the plan. And so September 22nd, you can see that we had a strategic plan work session again. We reviewed it and updated it. And then in October, the school board meeting, we had policy analytics come and talk to us about and do a actual presentation on assessed value and also tax rates. And then in November, another school board work session reviewed the strategic plan with our architect, Barton Cove Villama. So moving forward to 2021, school board work session reviewed Barton Cove Villama information, did a SWOT analysis. We'll share some of that here in a little bit. And also the board took the tour of the buildings, and that was part of the strategic plan also. And then September 28th, another work session, updating number 4. And at the school board meeting, it was a recommendation to approve the resolution authorizing appraisals of real estate. And then getting a little closer to current, April 12th of 2022, we had Ice Miller Bond Council talk to us about the controlled project process and referendum presentation. Mr. Eric Long is with us today, but when he came on April 12th, that was virtual, so he was on the big screens. Now he's here in person. So welcome to Mr. Eric Long. And then school board meeting, also the recommendation to approve the resolution authorizing negotiation and execution of purchase agreement, which was done then. And so on May 10th of 2022, another school board work session update from architect firm, and they are Barton Cove Villama. And then, of course, just last Tuesday was a school board meeting, and that was the first preliminary determination hearing. So I'm running 2 screens right now. So where we came from. I love this slide because it has a lot of our history. So it's actually on the other wall here. You can see all of our board members. You can see that MSD Wabash County Board of Education in 1959, we became a school corporation. That was July 1 of 1959. If you recall, back in 1959, there were 9 different township schools. And you can see those people that were involved with that back then. I wonder who Herman was. Any relative? Huh?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So the history of MSD of Wabash County. MSD, of course, was founded in 62 years ago for multiple township schools. And you can see there, 1959, of course, 1962. And then the 4 elementary schools were built then from 1965 to 1980. Be interested to know how many people went to some of those township schools here too. So how many people went to township schools here?
Don't ask them their ages.
We're not gonna go that far. We're not gonna go that far, because I know some of these people, they get upset if I did that. Okay, where we are today. So, we have 2 preschool programs, one at Metro North Elementary, the Little Norse, of course, and at Southwood Elementary, Little Knights. The 3 elementaries, Metro North Elementary, Sharp Creek Elementary, and Southwood Elementary. And of course, 2 of our traditional junior senior high schools, Northfield Junior Senior High School and Southwood Junior Senior High School. Our non-traditional school, White's Junior Senior High School. We also have a bridge program. That's an online credit recovery program, and that's run through White's Junior Senior High School. And then we do have a collaboration with 4 other school districts on the other 2 slides there, Wabash Miami Area Program and also Heartland Career Center. So the SWOT analysis that we talked about, our strengths, and we could probably add a lot more to this, but these are just a few. Assessed valuation is one of our strengths, retiring debt, last payment of 2023, cash balances in the rainy day fund, circuit breaker losses are minimal, and student transfers from out of district. Those are all strengths. The opportunities then, low tax rate, below the median, managed tax rate, develop debt plan, expand out of district transfers, and creation of long range planning. Some of the weaknesses, student capacity in buildings, 2 high school buildings, double services, aging buildings, facility updates, lack long-range facility plan, lack debt plan. And then threats is declining enrollment, state legislation funding, open enrollment, also resistance to facility needs, upgrades, additional required programming, and unexpected growing costs. Of course, COVID has been one of those examples. So what is the challenge? And a lot of you have seen this before, but the projected population decline, this graph was provided to us by Grow Wabash County. And you can actually see then from the census from 2010 to 2020, we lost 1,912 residents in Wabash County in just those 10 years. Now you think about 1,912, that may not seem like a lot in a large metropolitan area, maybe in Marion County, but for Wabash County, that's a large percentage. You kind of take a mental picture of that graph, and you can see like around 1980 to mid-80s, the population, of course, of Wabash County was at the peak. And then if you kind of look at our own student enrollment, it's a little harder to understand or look at it exactly as far as the same comparison, because some of the ranges that we have or some of the dates that we have of Northfield and Southwood of just 9 through 12, we don't have all of the data. But we give you a little bit of comparison. So 1976 to 1977, that sounds hard to say, but it is. 1976 to 1977, the population of the two high schools combined are 980. You can see then it goes down there through 1981, 1982. There's a big space there where we don't have some data. And then you can start looking at some of our present day classes. And actually then if you go all the way down to the last one, 2020, 2021, is 509, and actually it's not on this graph or on this chart, but it's actually 509 again. So you do have 509 compared to the 980 that we had in the same buildings, 1976 to 1977. So, student opportunities. Mr. Drake is going to share the next two slides.
Hello, I'm Tim Drake.
Settle down, relax. It'll be a little bit of a conversation here. That'd be nice.
I'm not really sure who's going to go with that.
Go ahead.
My name is Tim Drake. I'm Chief Academic Officer. And so when we talk about student opportunities, I'll tend to focus more on the academic side, but that isn't to shortchange the athletic or even the extracurricular side. We're raising whole children, not children just to do to take a standardized test or just to do whatever to go to college. And so we'll have that big picture in mind, but for the next few minutes, I'm going to walk down the academic side of it. I have the last couple of years done an audit for our program just to check and see how we're doing. As we lose students and as we lose programming, everybody just kind of makes assumptions. And so rather than just go with those assumptions, I went and actually printed out course lists. And so I compared our school offerings with other schools our size. That's roughly a 2A school, about 100 kids per class. I didn't do some of the bigger schools. I didn't do a lot of the smaller schools. I just found something that I felt like our community was used to offering students. And I found, and I have the notes. I don't want to put them up here for a couple of reasons, but I have the notes, and I'm more than willing to meet with anybody to share the specifics of that. When it comes to our dual credit and our AP offerings, there's always one student in the class. We are at par, if not above, what other schools our size offer. Our pathways, again, are very much on par with what other schools offer. If there was one area where I would kind of poke and hope that we could do better, it would be in the area of fine arts. We don't have a lot in our music and our drama departments, mostly because of sizes of choir and sizes of bands. And so that does present a challenge. And so that would be one area I feel like as a district we need to keep trying to do better at. And we do. I don't think we just accept it, but I think that the audit would show that we are a little bit lacking in that area. On that note, before I get to my specific examples of to help you kind of see the programming issues, I took the liberty also of trying to pinpoint our size of school that we felt comfortable with. People come to Wabash County for lots of different reasons. I can tell you I'm a Marion Giant. I didn't get any birds or anything bad there. Appreciate that. I absolutely loved it. And if you would have asked me at Marion if I would have ended up in a small school, I would have said not a chance. I thrived in that. I enjoyed the atmosphere. My wife did not, and her family, the Coopers and Pilgrims, they love this area. And so before I met her, though, I went to teach at White's. And when I interviewed to teach at White's, Luke Curlis was a principal there. Some of you guys might know the Curlis name. When I went in their interview, I literally said to them in the interview, I understand if you don't hire me, I'm only going to be here another year or two, and then I'm going to move on. That's what I said. They took a gamble and hired me, and here I am. This is my 25th year that I just finished here in the district, because it grows on you, right? The small school town feel. And so I figure we're roughly a 2A school. All of us have our different preferences, but I think If you look historically, we're about 100 kids per class. Just so you have a frame of reference, which so many people don't have anymore. Northfield High School this year for classification for IHSA for next year has 275 high school students. That puts them at a 1A school. Southwood has 240. That puts them at a 1A school. Wabash, if you were to combine the two of them, they would be 500, a high school of 515, which would make them in next year's classification a 3A school. They would be 3A by 20 students. Wabash, this year using IHSA numbers, will be a 2A school because it has 471 high school students. So if you were to combine Wabash with Northfield and Southwood, you would have a high school of 986 using IHSA numbers, which would put them 39 students away from being a 4A school. And so I didn't target a 4A school in my programming because I felt like our community is used to a 2A smaller school feel. And so all of my audit was based on that. All right, now to my examples. So I came up with two scenarios to help you see what happens as our class sizes get smaller and how that really impacts our offering. So I created a fictional person, Bobby. Bobby's been a senior who's been in band for forever. He goes to Heartland. We love sending kids to Heartland. As a matter of fact, we send an overwhelming group of kids to Heartland, both north and south. You'll find also that very few of our seniors are in the building full day anymore. Most of them are either at an internship, at a college campus, or at Heartland. And we try hard to drive kids to Heartland. And so those of you from the older days were saying we used to not send kids to Heartland because of this, that, and the other. That isn't the case. You should sit and talk to Roger Doon and Nicole Michael, and they'll tell you we try to get kids there. So Bobby, you can see in the schedule, he's going to go to Heartland. Heartland's a 3-hour commitment. And so he'll go there either all morning or all afternoon. So in our case, we put him there all afternoon. And he has to take English, and he has to take government econ, so that gives him 1 period. It's not uncommon for a senior to have a study hall, but Bobby wants to do band, and he likes to do CAD. Several kids have recently graduated from MSD and are now at the architecture school at Ball State, which is a highly competitive. Some of them are even going on a master's work in that. So our CAD program is very good. But Bobby now has a choice, and he won't be able to take them both because they won't fit in the schedule. Getting more kids won't alleviate all problems. Bobby's all have to make decisions. Homestead High School, Carmel High School, they don't get to take everything. And so this isn't a silver bullet. I'm not saying adding more kids together will solve it. I think it will get us to where we're used to a 2A school giving kids the programming opportunities that they're used to having. Parents feel like they're going to get their kids that kind of service. And so Bobby's going to have to make that choice because we don't have enough band sections, we don't have CAD sections to make that work. Another example, if you go to the next slide. Advanced placement and dual credit. So you can see here, those are the actual numbers from this year. Northfield juniors 65, seniors 63. Southwood juniors 59, seniors 48. Just that little drop in numbers of students is going to result in a significant lowering of AP classes and dual credits. And so as I sit here as the chief academic officer, what I see is we have a large group of students chasing AP and dual credit classes. But what I notice is at one school, they're able to access a lot more of them than they are at another school. And so we explore options. Some of our students take classes online. Some of our teachers drive half day at one building and a half day at another building. And what we find is those are not as effective as having a student in the building or a teacher in the building all day. We've explored those. Mr. Kefauver replied earlier to March 13th when we went to COVID. COVID forced us all in March, April, May to do our best with virtual instruction, and it was kind of put a Band-Aid on it and survive. That fall, the board decided that we were going to try to get students in the building. Some parents didn't feel comfortable sending their students to the building. So we hired our own teachers. We gave them an extra stipend to teach our own students after that. At the end of the semester, every one of my teachers quit. Every one of them teachers quit. And it isn't because they don't have a heart for kids. As a matter of fact, I would say they quit because they have a heart for kids. They realized that without the relationship of that they weren't being as successful as they wanted to be. Parents, most of the parents dropped out of it as well. Same reason. They knew their kids weren't getting the education they wanted. And so I would suggest as chief academic officer that our strategy to solve this problem is not through half-day teachers driving back and forth, nor is it through virtual instruction. It's through having a teacher in the building, building relationships, being with students. The number one response on surveys why people pulled out of the virtual program, the number one response was lack of relationships. And so as we talk about enrollment decreasing, this is what we see, right? We offer everything under the sun. Wabash and Southwood and Northfield offer everything they want, everything you want. Can you get it in a kid's schedule? That's the challenge. Because we can't offer multiple sections to free up the schedule so a student can take one thing that they like and another thing that they like. And so I feel like part of our response to the strategic plan is to try to get a larger critical mass. I like to look at Mr. Bowman because that's his phrase. Larger critical mass so that our students can get the kind of programming that we expect to offer in our kind of community. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
All right, thank you. Dr. Kuhn is going to do the next 3 slides.
Yeah, I don't have much of a sob story like that. But I'm Chris Kuhn, I'm Assistant Superintendent, Finance and Operations. Similar background as Mr. Drake even, went to a larger high school, worked at Westfield for 8 years, which is an extremely large high school. Came back got a job in Wabash, at Southwood actually, was hoping to use it as a stepping stone, get back to Westfield. But really fell in love with the community and the opportunities that it allowed for my family, not only my family, but myself to grow in my experiences. So that's what brought me here for that. Now, part of this issue is probably my fault because I focus on facilities and operational sides from a day-to-day standpoint. And looking at some of the issues that we're running into and needs that we're running into with some of our facilities and how we operate, it made sense to kind of look at how some of those things, how we could evolve some of those things into fixing other issues that we may have, such as enrollment with academic programs and so forth. So part of our solution also relates to buildings and so forth. So I just gave this at the last meeting. It's just a snapshot. It's a 30,000 foot view of kind of the overall costs that we have for specific buildings. Those numbers may not mean a whole lot. I broke out what of those contain salary and benefits because obviously we have individuals that are employed at those building levels. And then you throw into other costs such as maintenance costs, utility costs, other things that might be building level costs, but we also have things that are district level costs that are there because of the buildings that aren't necessarily separated by buildings. One example of that would be our insurance, for example. We spend close to $250,000 in property insurance. Well, it's not tied to a specific building. They don't bill us, Metro North is this much in insurance, a district-wide bill. So some of that stuff still has to be separated out into the buildings. And so that's where you get the B is the building level cost and the D is the district level cost. So if you go to the next slide, I took some of that information and broke it down a little bit just to get a better sense of some of the things that we're talking about there. And the things that I looked at here were maintenance costs and utility costs. Just picked out a couple examples and based that off of the square footage of the building and student enrollment in the building. Because on the last slide, we saw that our buildings aren't really at full capacity when it comes to the size that they can actually hold as far as students are concerned. So if you go to the next one, this just kind of same numbers, it just makes the graph or the chart a little bit smaller to see. But you can look at a few things there, and I'm not here to kind of pinpoint necessarily everything, but you can look at, for example, utility costs, okay? If we look at all of our buildings and we look at the cost per square foot as an example, you can see Sharp Creek costs our corporation the most per square foot when it comes to utility costs. Maintenance costs, you can see that Northfield and Southwood have higher maintenance costs, which you kind of would think that they would because they have larger buildings. But when you look at it from a student enrollment standpoint, it's significantly higher, and mainly because those buildings don't have the number of students that they need to have in there to really justify some of those costs overall. And so not gonna go, like I said, I'm not gonna go into detail into every little bit of thing there, but something to kind of look at and pay attention to when we're talking about efficiencies, and how our buildings are being used and what they're being used for.
Thank you. So what is the solution? Same slide as last week. Build a new high school, grades 9 through 12, currently at Northwood and Southwood would combine into one new high school. The current Northwood and Southwood junior, senior high buildings would transition into buildings for preschool through 8th grade. This would transition MSDWC traditional schools from 5 buildings into 3 buildings. So student opportunities. So maintain and enhance academic offerings, consistent course scheduling. Mr. Drake talked about that a little bit, and then Dr. Kuhn talked about maintain and enhance extracurricular offerings. Mr. Drake also mentioned that a little bit. So depending on the interests of our students, maintaining and enhancing academic and extracurricular offerings, including the arts, can be accomplished. And so that's one example. If we go to the next slide, efficiency in staffing will result in increased opportunities, and then utility and maintenance costs. I want to talk about that a little bit more. First of all, if I can get all my notes to work, and then just stop. So what are the increased opportunities? So I'll give you a little example. English, for example. That might not be the best example, but for English, the Indiana State approved course titles and description is a 400-page document. It's a PDF 400-page document. So we know that teachers and students have different interests. And so we also know that you can look at what they can take. For example, English 9, for example, is pretty much what all of our English 9 students take. But there are a lot of different pages that talk about on that document as far as different ideas that you could have. So I'm still trying to get this here. Mr. Drake, I should have had you do that. So we talked about that earlier, as far as running the PowerPoint, doing all that. So another thing is that transfers right now, when we talk about efficiencies and staffing will result in increased opportunities, right now we actually take, and Dr. Kuhn can explain this a little bit more, but we take approximately 13% of our education fund to transfer to the operation fund. And the reason for that is when the state of Indiana in 2019 changed it to the different funds, just the education and operations fund, because of putting certain people out of the education fund and putting them into the operations fund, the state that were put up there earlier, you do know that those savings of those efficiencies, we would not have to transfer as much money. And so those funds then can be used for more opportunities for our staff. Also, some referendums, there's 2 different types of referendums, and we have the experts here, maybe they can correct me if I'm wrong, but we have a construction one, which we're talking about tonight, and also the project, but we also have an operations. And an operations referendum is basically for operations. So for example, to increase possible benefits and salaries of staff. And so in this model of being more efficient, it would be an indirect result of being able to provide more of those opportunities. So in other words, you would not have to have an extra referendum like an operational referendum. So those are just a couple examples. Also, we do know that of our 8 districts that surround us, we are the only one that have the 2 high schools. And so we actually spend more money and more budgeted money towards athletics for coaches because we duplicate everything. And so here again, that would be another opportunity to be more on par with other schools as far as that goes. Because right now, even though we do spend more money than anybody around us, it's because that we double everything up. And so that makes a difference also. Just another indirect result of a plan like this would help a lot. So again, a lot of this goes along with our strategic plan that we'll talk about a little bit more about attracting and retaining students and also staff. So possible timeline of the project, this has not changed from what we talked about last Tuesday. So of course, when the referendum passes November 8th, then we move on to the period where you can see from the architectural drawings would happen, also bids, and then the estimated time through through those people would be the groundbreaking in March of 2024. And then they said approximately 3 years to build high school, so that would be an August 2027 start. And then, of course, so the first students would be actually, and then we haven't talked about this a lot, but and then transition to the 3 schools, possibly another one, probably 2, maybe even 3 years, but possibly the transition to the 3 school corporation would be 2029, 2030. So there were some questions last time that we added a few of our slides, and that's why now. So the why now, first of all, the real estate opportunity that we have. Also, low interest rates. Also, building costs will continue to rise. Retiring staff and retired debt. And so to go over that a little bit more, we'll talk about some of this. First of all, the real estate will allow for additional opportunities in the future. We are also working with a design engineer, and they continue to project increased building and labor costs. I don't think anybody would not realize that right now. Retired debt, this allows for a larger project potential right now. Of course, you saw that earlier that the reduced bonds and that debt is in 2023. There's some other explanations here we'll go over. So sometimes we talk about tax rate. This is the tax rate for 2022 right now. People sometimes wonder about our own tax rate. So right now, 2022, you can see on the far left, MSD, we are the lowest, and we typically compare our 8 districts that we border. Okay, so we do border all these, and so you can just see down the line, Eastbrook, Manchester, North Miami, Huntington, McConaughey, jump up to Peru, $1.32, Oak Hill, $1.50, and Wabash City, $1.53. So of those districts that we border, we are the lowest at this point. And you have to also remember that we are the lowest of the 25th percentile in the state of Indiana, of those 294 corporations. So that's where we are right now. So why now? That is one of the reasons. Also, historical interest rates. We did not find a chart that goes all the way back into the 70s, but anybody that bought a home in the 70s or bought anything in the 70s, you're talking about 14, 15, 16% interest rates. I know my wife and I, when we purchased our home in 1989, it was 10.875. This is more for bonding, but yet you can see that we are still in the historical low interest rate era, although you can see that there is starting to be a spike. So when we go back to why now, that is another why now. So another question was, what have we looked at before? This question was brought up, and so this was part of our strategic plan that we looked back and we actually had this slide, and I think it's been posted a lot of different places, but this slide back in September, retain all schools, maintain and improve all 5 school buildings and adjust grade levels as needed, shuffling grade levels as needed to phase out to 4 to 3 buildings over time, give specific focus on the 9 through 12 while maintaining and improving certain buildings, and of course build a new high school, build a 9 through 12 high school to include phasing into a 3-building district over time while maintaining and improving certain buildings. And so, going along with those 3, what if the referendum does not pass? So if the referendum fails, I know you can read them, I'll read this out loud. MSDWC will continue to aim at providing the best education for our students. Looking back at our strategic plan options for the future will include borrowing more money to improve our aging buildings and or reconfigure the current buildings and upgrading them to accommodate 1 high school. So I want to thank Laura Lange-Bartels and our team who actually have different ideas, and then she able to create this. It makes it very visually pleasing when we look at this. When we compare looking at our strategic plan of those 4 goals and also what the different options were. So retaining all schools really do not meet any of the strategic plan. Shuffling grade levels, okay, student achievement, that allows more opportunities there, so that's what we talked about. Facilities and technology provides some efficiency, not all efficiency, but then of course a new high school, it goes along with all 4 of our strategic plans of student achievement, recruitment and retention, financial, your facilities and technology. So strategic plan number 4 is what we've been highlighting, but they're all very, very important. Additional opportunities for students, facility improvements, maintenance and upgrades, and building use efficiencies. So 62 years after the creation of MSDWC, you see those gentlemen up there in the top left-hand corner, we want to propel MSD of Wabash County for the next 60 plus years. So Daisy, that goes along with some of the things that you've asked me to provide tonight.
Excuse me. We will now hear from Jim Elizondo, our underwriter, about how the proposed project will be financed, as well as information about the effect on the typical property taxpayer.
Good evening.
Amy, thanks.
I would like to take us through the next steps of if you as a board and a community decide to proceed with the project and go through the referendum process. What does the size of the project look like? How do we propose restructuring and paying the debt? And then what does that mean to you as taxpayers? Go to the next slide. Start with a few assumptions. The first bullets just are a reminder that we do have 9 different taxing districts. So we have a wide variety of taxpayer bills out there. The township only, the unincorporated areas, your tax bill will have a county tax, a school tax, a township tax on it. When you move to the incorporated areas, the city portions, you then add a city tax on there, as well as there may be other little pieces, but everybody's tax bill is different. So really that assumption is truly just to show that you have a very diverse taxing body. Next, we want to look at the assessed values. As we project forward estimated tax impacts and rates, we have to base those on some assessed value assumptions. So historically, over the last 10 years, you've grown at about 1.9% per year. In 2022, you grew at 5.4%. So we then look at what do we project forward. You have employed policy analytics to do some assessed value projections and review. And I know in your timeline of prior meetings, they have presented to you, but we're actually using their assumptions going forward. And that averages about 3.6% per year. However, their assumptions are very detailed in that there will be years it bounces around. So we're following exactly what they laid out as their assumption in our numbers. And finally, market interest rates. I'm using about 1.5% over the market. Your graph that you looked at there has that spike that we saw just recently. Since I was here, this is not, so just remember we're going to look at conservative interest rates, but in the last week, we've seen a 50 basis point drop in municipal interest rates. Now, part of that is we've been on an inflation fear. Now the recession fears are pushing, and our market, as volatile as it is, 50 basis points in a week shows you how volatile our market currently is. But all of a sudden now my assumptions are closer to 2% over the market today. But that's not to say a week from now, the markets look at it differently. But that's just to reiterate that historically we are at still low interest rates in the tax exempt market. But we are trying to be conservative in that estimate, because tonight, after this hearing, you will be asked to consider a resolution if you decide to proceed that will set maximums, and we want those to be conservative and worst case numbers. Next slide. The estimate for the projects would be approximately $115 million bond issue, of which after you take in the costs of going to the bond markets, we would just say that would generate roughly $113,445,000. And that's, again, numbers that are in your resolutions. They are estimates, though. There are 2 other items that will fit into your budget. One is capitalized interest. Capitalized interest is something we put in the budget, and in your case, it's to smooth the tax, is a flexibility to smooth the tax rate in that first year. If we don't need it, that comes out and can be used to either reduce the borrowing or increase the size of the hard and soft costs of construction. And then finally, the last piece is about $1,170,000 is cost of issuance. Cost of issuance are truly all the costs involved in going to the bond markets. That's underwriting the bonds, rating agency reviews, attorney's fees, title insurance, survey costs, appraisal costs, all the things that are involved in a bond issue. But that gets us to our total of $115 million, and we want to share with you an estimated budget of where that money would go. Next, this is a representation of your existing debt service tax rate. If you recall or have looked at your tax bills, you have two tax-based funds. One is the operation fund, one is the debt service fund. We are looking directly here at the debt service fund because the debt service fund is the fund that you would utilize to pay bonds and debt service. And you'll see, as has been mentioned, that all of your long-term debt does pay off here fairly soon. You'll see the green line. When we started this process in 2019 and then into 2020, we were looking at a historic rate in the debt service fund of right around 29 cents per $100 of assessed value. And that's what I've highlighted for those 4 years with the green line. In 2022, you had a strong 5.4% assessed value growth, which drove down your tax rate because you had your level debt payments, but the tax rate forced that, or the assessed value forced that rate down. And then we're still projecting in 23, because you're starting this process, you're not going to be ready to have new debt in 23, even if you were to act tonight. We are projecting that with current estimates of assessed value growth, that debt service rate could drop even further. Then, if we go to the next slide, this is what we would propose a $115 million bond issue would look like in your debt service fund. That would shoehorn in right after your other debt is paid off. If we go to the next slide, we estimate that that is an increase of a little over 54 cents per $100 of assessed value over what you historically were paying in 2018 through 21. And the reason, again, we're going back to where this whole process started and where, ignoring the AV growth, where tax bills have kind of settled in for multiple years. If we go to the next slide, there are a couple things. The next two slides will lay out some of the maximums that you will be asked as a board to consider tonight. And the first one is you would be setting a maximum lease payment. The maximum lease payment would be based on this project on its own. It has nothing to do with existing debt. It would be the maximum payment that could be generated. And we're showing that at $10,400,000 per year. And that if you do decide to proceed, that can never be exceeded. It can always be reduced, but it can't be exceeded. And then based on that, the tax impact, now my eyes are going crazy, it's 83 cents. There it is, now I can see it. Is 83 cents per $100 of assessed value. So if we take the assessed values and put that maximum lease payment in there, we get an estimate of an 83-cent total increase for the project, but a difference from your current tax bill of about the 54 cents. Next item are some items that are required from the legislature to be in all resolutions for projects of this size. First is your current debt service levy. That's at $1,947,000, and that is your 2022. So that's on the books in your existing budget. The debt service tax rate is at 25.6 cents per $100 of assessed value. We would also be setting a maximum term of your lease. That would be 22 years. However, in Indiana, you can only borrow up to 20 years on school financings. So the extra 2 years are built in to allow flexibility if there were a delay, any of those things, so we don't have to start the process over. So that's part of the legal counsel's always lets us go out to about 22 years as a maximum, realizing that we can only sell for 20 years, so your debt will never be over 20 years, but that lease payment has to fit within that. We do have to estimate our total interest. That's 71 million. Again, very conservative. Like I said, we're up to get to an even number. So it's a pretty conservative number there. And then finally, there are two ratios that are required. And these are ratios that some legislator wanted to see and wanted everybody to show, but they actually do have some reference in that bond buyers will look at these ratios as they evaluate what interest rate they think they should be getting if they buy your bonds. First one is debt service to net assessed value. That is really your total debt service, including the projection for the new bonds, divided by your current assessed value. So that's about 1.3%. That puts you in the low range, not quite to the moderate, but low range, not extremely low, but still very comfortable that to a bond buyer, it is a non-event. It would not tickle their fancy at all or concern them about what kind of rate bump they might need. And then finally, the last ratio is considering your debt, all overlapping and underlying debt. So we look at how much debt is outstanding currently, and then we look at the county debt, the township debt, the school corporations, or the city debts, et cetera. And we allocate a share of those debts to this number. So in the case of a township, that township's debt would be 100% allocable to you because that whole township is part of your taxing district. For the city of Wabash, we would look at what portion of yours is the city, so that would be a smaller portion of that debt's allocable. So in that case, we come up with about 3.38% per the net assessed value. And that fits into the moderate range, the low end of the moderate range. Again, the market of Indiana bonds, that would not be a concern to anyone, and the rating agencies. But I just wanted to share those numbers because they will be in your resolution. Your resolution also will have a table showing the estimated tax rates and levies for the next 10 years. Again, the graph represents that, but that will be in your resolution as part of the table. Now, what does that incremental tax rate increase mean to you as taxpayers? Again, you'll see across the top the 9 taxing districts. They vary from townships to cities and towns, etc. And you'll notice that this first slide, I'm taking the median home value in each of those districts. Now, oh yeah, if you could zoom that up a little bit, it might help others as well as me.
I can see that one better.
There we go.
It went again. It's real light. The figures are light.
But I'll highlight a couple here. So if we go to LeGros Township, there we go. The top number, it shows the median home value in LeGros. That's $149,400. What we do then is take that home and take away, that would be the gross assessment. We then take away your homestead exemption, your supplemental exemption, if you have a mortgage exemption. I don't take anything into account for veterans or 65, over 65 exemptions, but if you have those, that would impact that. So then the estimate of that incremental tax increase would be approximately $351 per year, or about $29 per month. If you go to LeGros, just in the town, you'll see that a very different number in that the average or the median home value is $45,400 with about $48 per year or $4 per month. That whole table goes and just takes that median. Now, all of us, if any of us hit this table exactly right, you're done and you know your number. But it's not going to be the case. So I also then on the next slide add a $100,000 home. And what's interesting here, and when you go through a referendum, all taxpayers, no matter what circuit breaker caps are in place, if you go through a referendum bond is outside or exempt from circuit breaker. So if you have 65 and older veterans, credits. Those are all credits that come out before you get to the AB calculation, so those are maintained. But once you go through a referendum, all taxpayers share equally per assessed value. And so that's what this example shows, that if we assume a $100,000 home, you'll see that every taxing district, if you have a $100,000 home there, you'll be paying roughly $177 per year more, or about $15 per month. There will be a tax calculator if you do decide to go through the referendum process and proceed. There will be an online tax calculator set up at the state, as well as we could have something set up on your webpage where you can then go in and put your specific information and look just at your property. And then finally, the next slide. We looked at farmland. Now, any of you that are farmers know that farmland is not an easy calculation, from the standpoint that every acre has different production values. Even within the same acre, you utilize a base assessed value from the state, and also a lot of farms also have homesteads on them, other outbuildings, etc. But for this slide, I'm looking at $100,000 of 100% tillable land, all at the base production factor of 1. So in effect, I don't know that that property's in your county either, as I've described it, but again, it shows that that $100,000 farmland, roughly $542 per year, or $45 per month. The tax calculator is the only way you as farmers are going to be able to get a really consolidated estimate of what your tax impact will be. There is one more slide that if you happen to have your tax bill in hand, you can take the net assessed value, divide it by 100, and multiply it times the 54.17 cents per estimated incremental increase, and that would give you, that's a calculation I've used in all of those numbers. But the problem is give me that net assessed value. You know, it's easy to have your tax bill, or you can go online in the county and look up your net assessed value and use that, do that math. So at that point, that's all I have.
I have a couple questions, just
Yes,
maybe so Jim can clarify
Yes.
for us. So you mentioned for this project, the estimated cost is $115 million. That's what we're proposing. However, we will not borrow any type of monies until we've actually gone through a bidding process. And so if that bidding process comes back and it's only $100 million, then we wouldn't be borrowing the 115.
The way the process is set up, the ultimate bids and your borrowing dictates the lease payment. So I told you the maximum lease payment. To the extent you only borrow $100 million under that example, we would pair, and we would also know our real market interest rates. So the combination of the market interest rates and the lower borrowing, we would then reduce those lease payments across the board. And the way the lease is written is we are required to reduce the lease down to the actual debt service on the bonds plus a slight rounding. So yes, that would be an opportunity to pare everything back down and reduce the total cost and tax impact.
So at that point, those changes will be updated. The changes would be reflected in the online calculator then.
Well, yes, we could definitely do that. If you have that before the referendum, we could pare that back. If you've already done the referendum, we would keep the calculator, we could readjust it, and
Right.
your community could always have that access. To the extent you were to pare this project back before, sometime.
I get what you mean. If we go to referendum before we know those exact numbers, we can't.
Then it's not gonna change, right?
Right.
Or if at any point if the board decides, well, we've got new information and 112 is the magic number, we could then modify at that point. But we are setting a maximum, but we can always pare back.
Okay.
And we can always pare back until the moment we sell bonds.
Right.
Once we sell bonds, then you're locking into a fixed repayment that we would need to keep.
Can you go to slide 9 for me for a second? So I just want to make sure that I'm clear on this and everybody else is clear on this. Just talking to a couple patrons, and they saw something on Facebook, and so it's hard to believe that something on Facebook is not 100% accurate. That it looks like, just because it looks like our debt, since it raises to 83 cents and it was only 29 cents from a historical perspective, that our taxes are automatically going to multiply by 3 times. So if I'm paying $700, then I'm automatically going to be paying $2,100. Can you explain that a little bit?
Yeah, and I will share that Chris asked me this question, so I did prepare a slide to help me get there in case he chose to visit that tonight. But the idea is, let's stay on that slide for a second. You remember I mentioned that in the school fund, or the school's tax rate, you have the operations fund and the debt service tax rate. This is only the debt service tax rate, so that's part of the question, is that we're only looking at part of your school tax rate. So when we add 2, then that will change the numbers. But if we can go to the very back of my presentation, the first slide past that, and that you're going to have to zoom to help all of us.
Yes.
And you can actually go to the top half if you want to even zoom even more to that net assessed value. So this is a tax bill from, did I do, which one did I do?
I think, is it up at the top?
Can you scroll
Is
down?
that Rowan? No, that's, the city, okay. I started with the city. So the portion of the school district in the city, we started with their median home value of $142,300. That is the gross assessed value. As you know, the hope of the legislature was that that would match your market value. None of them are exactly at market value, but that's in essence what we're looking at, is we're trying to look at a $142,000 home. I'm going to kind of just work through the tax bill. These are the components of a tax bill, and I think it will help answer your question. So first we take away the deductions that are available. First is a homestead standard deduction. Everybody gets the $45,000. The supplemental deduction is 35% of the remainder of that balance. In this case, that's $34,000. We're assuming this homeowner has a mortgage, so they get a $3,000 deduction. If they were 65 and over, a disabled veteran or a partially disabled veteran, there would be additional credits that would show up there, and those are tied to, in effect, to property tax caps, but it's not at the cap, it's a credit is the way those are issued. I'm assuming none of those, because they are only make it harder for me to explain. So if we go to the net assessed value, that $142,300 home has a net assessed value of $60,245. That is the net assessed value that we're going to put toward that calculation I showed you on that last screen, where we take the 54 cents times the net assessed value divided by 100. So that's what's happening in the background. Then we look at the tax rates. This is really where I think we start to get to Chris's question. Of the total $3.60 tax rate that taxpayers pay, 41 cents of it is coming from the county, 1.7 from the township, $2.11 from the school, or from the county, or the city, 0.87 from the school, and 1.8 from the library. That makes up that $3.60. Of that, you'll see that the school makes up on the far right about I'm going to confuse. Let's stay in the left column. So we calculate a gross tax. The way we calculate a gross tax is we take that tax rate times the net assessed value. That says the gross tax is $2,173. However, we have tax caps. The circuit breaker tax caps are 1% of the gross assessed value. And if you remember, that was that $142,000 number. That gives us a tax cap for this taxpayer of $1,423. The tax bill can't be higher than that in the current situation unless you have exempt debt. And under this scenario, there is no other exempt debt for this taxpayer. That means there's a savings of about $750 due to the tax cap, and if we move down, you'll see that the non-exempt tax rate tax bill is $1,423, and that's due to tax caps. The actual bill that is out there is $2,173, but tax caps capped that taxpayer at the $1,400 level. The next column over, and you can stay right there, we don't need to go above because the assumption's above. Next tax bill is what if we add the incremental increase from the referendum? That's that 54 cents that you see on the school rate. I assume all the other tax rates stay right where they are. We add the 54 cents, taking the school rate up to $1.4194. That's about a 61% increase. So right off the bat, we don't have the tripling because we're sharing among two rates. But then, as we compare it with the total rate, that's about a 15% increase in rate for that entire tax bill. So you see, as that incremental increase, as we share it with the broader tax base, causes our percentage increase to not be as dramatic. We come down to the bottom and you'll see that because of tax caps, the tax bill actually increases about 22%. That's that $326 that we showed on the prior slides. But that's purely a function of the tax cap has taken a percentage of that out and changes the percentage slightly. Does that help a little bit with the one idea? I've also done the same thing for the smallest tax bill, which throws those percentages slightly different, but it does do the same thing. If you'd like me to go through that, or if that helped answer your question, that it is.
No, it helped answer my question. I just wanted to make it clear that even though that debt rate looks like it's tripling, it's not tripling the tax bill.
Exactly. And that's the component of that's only one component of your entire tax bill. Other questions?
Any questions for him? All right, we'll now open the public hearing. Remember, if you would like to speak, please have signed in on the sheet that was out front. We'll get that here in a second and start going through those. If your name did not get on that list, we'll give you a second here to get, or if you've changed your mind, if you said no and you'd like to say something, we'll change that. While he's getting that, I would like to just say that, as I mentioned earlier, we ask that you state your name and address and limit your comments to the proposed project and financing being considered. And keep your comments to about 3 minutes or so that we can avoid being repetitive. So the first person I have signed in and somebody would like to speak is Carrie Johnson.
My name is Carrie Johnson, and I live at 4503 East Hanging Rock Road in LaGrow. I guess I just wanted to take a minute tonight and thank all of you gentlemen that are sitting in front of us. First of all, for your transparency and the way this process has gone. I loved the way Mr. Kefauver laid that out and all the communications and the opportunities that we've had up until this point to hear the thought processes and to understand the whys behind what's going on. From the time Mr. Kefauver started having meetings with us at the schools, I'm a teacher at Southwood, I've made sure to stay in contact with the administrators, and I've watched the work sessions online, and I feel like I've had a good opportunity to understand really how we've gotten here and what's going on. So I really appreciate that. The other thing that I've really appreciated is your willingness to not just settle for the status quo with education in Wabash. As a teacher and a parent of 3 kids, I am incredibly proud of what we do at Southwood High School. I'm incredibly proud of, my kids have actually been on both sides. I've had kids at Metro North and at Sharp Creek, and I've chosen to bring them to Southwood for a variety of reasons, but mostly to get them closer to me. And I've had incredible experiences with all of the schools. And so I'm super proud of what we do there. But I also, as a senior class sponsor, am getting ready to prepare for graduation on Saturday with 44 seniors at Southwood. I've watched it happen gradually over the years, and I'm one of those dual credit instructors, and I'm one of the electives teachers that my class numbers just keep dwindling. And it's a beautiful thing to have small classes, but it's a challenging thing when I'm trying to teach high-level education, academic subjects to 1 or 2 kids at a time. There's things that I could do with bigger classes. And so I just appreciate that you're not looking at the cheapest way to provide a good education, but you're willing to look at what we could do to provide the best education for the kids of Wabash County. Because if I'm doing my math right, 2 of my 3 kids could graduate from this new high school. And I am extremely excited about the opportunities that this would allow them to have that they might not have otherwise. So thank you for all of those things. And I guess the only thing else that I would say is, if there's people in this community that don't understand the whys, or don't understand the numbers, or don't understand what's going on, I encourage you to reach out to any of these people, because I have done so many times and they've been very forthcoming with information. I know it gets a little overwhelming sometimes, but I'll be one of the first to get on there and use that tax calculator to see, because it's going to affect our tax bill significantly too. And so then you've got to just decide whether it's worth it or not, whether that educational opportunity is worth it for the kids in the community. I think that it is, and I think that it's good for me as a teacher, it's good for my kids at their education, and it's good for our community as a whole. But I respect that everybody may not fall on that side of it. But I hope that people, if this makes it to a referendum, can show up in November and have an educated opinion about what they're voting on. I would hate for people to just take what they see on Facebook and just take the opinions of a few and use that to make up their minds. So thank you again for everything that you've done to get us to this point, because I know it's been a lot of work.
Next person who indicated that they would like to speak is Carol Clark.
Well, actually, I wanted clarification on the tax thing, which he did. And the fact that there's only 44 seniors at Southwood is incredible to me. I don't have anything. I'll yield my time to her. She's got much better point to make.
All right, the next person who said they would like to speak is Daniel Cornett.
So I actually had a few pages, but I think some of the things have been answered.
And you are Daniel Cornett from?
Yeah, Southwood High School. I graduated there in 2020. First off, I appreciate, like Carrie Johnson said, the transparency there's been. I really appreciate the student aspect of it. I'm very student first. If you don't already know, I'm going into education, looking at this district to teach in, so this high school could potentially be my new workplace. As somebody who's looking at it from the future, my concern are the current teachers that are in the buildings. Primarily, you've got, like Mike Kefeber said, duplicates of everything. And my question is, and I don't know if it can be answered right now, is how do you determine who to cut, who to keep in this new building, if at all, if you're looking to keep the teachers and increase the number of classes of a certain subject, or if you're looking to decrease the number of classes and cut down. I think I have like 5 science teachers for Southwood, cut down to like 2 science teachers that focus on the different subjects. My concern is, how do you decide between the ones that have been there for 15, 20 years versus the new hires that are coming in, that Southwood particularly, I've noticed, have posted like on Facebook several job openings. Where that comes in, how will they be able to vie for a position at this new high school if it comes to that? And the concern is, as somebody who will be coming in pretty much a few years before this high school opens, how can somebody who's looking at this job be willing to go, yeah, I'm willing to put my hat in the ring, when there's teachers like Lindsay Nee currently at Southwood who will be doing it at that point for approximately 5 years by the time this high school opens? I'm just looking at the incoming teachers, those people that you're looking to hire. I really hope that this new high school provides the opportunity for them to work there. And it's not just based off of, well, this person's been with the district for 25 years. At the same time, I don't want those teachers who have been there, built the relationships with the students to just go, you're gone, you've been here long enough. And I don't know if that's been very clear. It may have been. I haven't attended all the meetings. I don't know everything per se about this. But if there could be some clarification, I'd be willing to hear it. That's just my concerns for the teachers that will be going to this new high school and how that divides out. So thank you guys very much.
And I want to say, Daniel, it was very fun and exciting to have you as on the superintendent advisory team for 4 years. And I appreciate all you're doing at Manchester University and what you're doing with the song that you created. That's just fantastic. So thank you for that. And I will say at this time, we are continuing to work on a frequently asked question document. And that document actually addresses that too. But overall, we're looking at providing more opportunities as part of this. And so providing more opportunities would actually make it so we keep those educational staff, and there would not be hardly any changes at all, if any. And you kind of said that earlier too. You said, if any, and I think that's really how that would work out. Because the situation that we're in, that when we talk about efficiencies, that efficiencies with our education fund is a lot different than what the operations is and how that works, and how you saw where Dr. Kuhn had all of the utility costs and things like that from a 5 building to 3 building. So we feel like there's a lot more opportunities for our staff, our present staff, and even for young teachers coming in too. But we'll put more things on there, but yeah, so I'll leave it at that.
All right, thank you. Next, we'll hear from Nancy Crum.
Nancy Crum, 4644 North, 300 West. Last week, I came to just get information, and I did. And I got more tonight, which has answered a lot of my questions. I'm probably the oldest one in this room. And Mr. Keyfaber, I was the last graduating class from Noble Township in 1962. So I know most of those gentlemen, and I lived through all of that, the forming of the MSD and everything. And 60 years, it is time that we do something, and I will admit that. And being the oldest one here, I would probably say the thing that scares me is $715 million. And I know young people probably don't think a thing about that. This just goes. But I think of what it's going to do to my taxes. I'm a senior citizen. My salary is not going to increase. I am stuck there. And, I get this reassessment paper in the mail. Why, my house is worth so much more than it was 50 years ago when I moved in. But that didn't put any change in my pocket. I just get to pay more taxes and the farmland. And so being an old senior citizen, that's what concerns me. I mean, I think we should give the best possible education to our kids that we can afford. I have 2 grandchildren that are teachers. I'm going to be paying for this for the rest of my life if it goes through. I mean, let's face it. I mean, I'll be lucky if I'm here in 20 years. So I'm paying for it the rest of my life. My grandkids, I've got to say, oh, you're going to be paying for this till you're 40 or 45 years old. That's what pulls me back a little bit. So, and I appreciate what you guys have done. You are in a no-win situation here because not everybody's going to be happy. We know that. But anyway, thank you.
Next, we will hear from Andrea Benbow.
Hi, I'm Andrea Benbow, 2775 East, 1100 South, Lecompton. And my dad is a teacher at Marion.
I was gonna ask, math teacher?
Social studies,
Social.
cum laude.
Oh, wow.
Let's talk afterwards. So, growing up, I heard both sides. I graduated from Southwood. I didn't realize my class was huge, apparently. We had 108. But I heard the other side from the big school, because they graduated 800 one year. Anyway, I guess being a parent of 2 elementary kids that are in the south part of the county, and who would be at the age that when they're in high school, this would be the high school they're going to. I have a lot of reservations about a school this far up. My kids coming this far when there are, in Indiana now, a lot of options. You don't have to send a kid to the school in your district anymore. You want to retain students? Well, for me, and I know other people in the south part of the county, that's a big question mark for a lot of us. How far away that high school is gonna be compared to other places we could have our kids go. And I also was real interested in your points about the facilities. How many schools we have, the capacity that we're not using right now, and how much each building is costing. And I saw that you did, I mean, as a board, look at a few different options. And one option I didn't see up there that maybe you considered it early on, it wasn't feasible, but whether there was any consideration to closing the elementary schools, adding on where you need to the high schools and making them kindergarten through 12, Southwood and Northfield. There are schools in Indiana that operate that way. They have one campus, they have kindergarten through 12, they're not that big, but they function, and you don't have huge drives, huge commutes, huge busing here and there where kids are crossing. It's a mess. You keep in your own area because of, just that's feasible. Transportation, gas, getting bus drivers to drive those long routes. I mean, that could be a consideration too, whether people want to keep doing that. So that was just, I came to the meeting last week and just looking at everything, that was just something that occurred to me, and I didn't know if that was anything that had ever been discussed. So I just thought I'd bring up that point. Thank you for your time.
Next, we will hear from Mike Ridney.
Yeah, Michael Rigney from La Fountain. You answered a couple of my questions. I believe, what if the referendum fails, and plan B would be to go back to this, like the reconfiguration from a few years back. Is that correct in my assumption on that idea, or?
Or retain all schools, we put that on the vote.
Right. Okay, but that one didn't check any of the boxes. The other one did, at least a few. Also, another question here is, you want to attract more students, and I think maybe in the beginning you may lose a few, but then in the long run, I still see you just stealing from the county again, from school corporation to school corporation. Same thing that's been happening the last 10 years. One family goes here, we don't like here, we'll move back to here. It's just back and forth. And with adding a higher tax rate, I believe that's gonna cause more families to say, no, we're not gonna move here. And we'll still end up having the same issues over and over again. Another question goes, what if, for some reason, the enrollment does go up in our school? And how many students do you want this building how many is it gonna hold? Right now we got 509, you said in Northfield and Southwood. How much are you gonna build it just to hold 500, 600, 700, 600? What if enrollment goes up to 700? And we need to add on. Where's that money gonna come from? You gonna do another referendum and raise taxes again another quarter? That's essentially what you're hoping you retain and attract more students. That's a good possibility. You gotta look that direction. And at what point do you gain so many students stealing from the county? Does the state come in and say, you need to do the dreaded C word? Then what? I don't know how that would all work out. Would the MSD people be stuck with the bill then? The entire bill? When everybody else comes in, or how's that gonna work? And the other concern that I have is a few years back, the thing that was brought up with the dreaded C word was, oh, your taxes are gonna go up, your taxes are gonna go up. That was the big fear that you all put in everybody's heads. Taxes are gonna go up. Well, here we go again. Taxes are going way up this time, so apparently taxes wasn't the real reason you didn't want to see the consolidation last time. Because these taxes are gonna go way up beyond what that would have been.
Mr. Ridney, I appreciate your concern, but again, I'm going to ask you to keep your questions and comments.
Well, you had Mr. Drake put in Wabash City Schools with a little presentation he got, so I don't see why I can't put in something here. You used it, I don't see why I can't. What is good for thee is, not good for you.
Okay. Mr. Downey, you had a question, Mark?
Well, kind of yes and no. For those that didn't even care, I was a 1963 graduate from South. And yes, you are one girl with it. And I've admired you for many years.
Oh, let's don't get too many here.
But first of all, I do want to tell all of you that appreciate the hard work of being on a position like this, because it doesn't come easy. And you cross a lot of bridges with a lot of people, and I respect Mr. Rigney's comments. And I do have to be concerned about going, before you go forward, going backwards. When my wife said this with me, and if you add together what we counted numbers of graduates in Metro, but you also need to look at Wabash, and have we exhausted all possibilities of one central high school, because of part of what he mentioned about what could come down the road and really having underplanned. It could happen. But the big thing is, you only get one shot at this. And I know that weighs heavily on all of you. I've been in these positions different times over the years. Farmland should be mentioned a little more than it is on how we're going to be affected tax-wise. All of us farm people here, we know what's coming our way. And it's hard to visualize when you own a house and you base all these decisions of what these school boards are going to do and how much it's going to raise up for you. But it's another thing when your livelihood's based off of nothing but solely agriculture. And I don't know how you answer that. We do need to take care of the kids. They're the most precious thing that any of us will ever have. They're one of God's gifts, and that's a fact. But you do have to have a responsibility in these decisions. But when you stood up and talked, a thought that kind of plagues me, when we build ourselves into this scenario, I just lived too many years and $115 million, and I'm quite aware what's going on in this world that we're living in financially. And anybody who wants to turn their head and stick it in the sand like the ostrich, we're in a very turbulent time financially. We don't know where that's going to end. And I think if you're not up to speed, we should really start reading and finding out where we are as a country financially. So my question kind of is like this, and I don't know how to ask it to get the right answer, but I'm just presenting it so you can all think once again about what you're about to say yes to. If we were to take a scenario of a 35 to 65% reduction in the stock markets, and it's happened before, and there's a lot of people who thinks it's about ready to happen again. And I know that's hearsay, naysay type thing. But if you don't acknowledge it, I want to know what's going to happen to this whole decision when we're in for $115 million, and all of a sudden things are only worth a little bit of what they were when we went into it. And that needs to have some serious thought. Do we need to make a change? Absolutely. Schools, when we went into the schools, and my senior year, I knew most of those people personally, and I was a young person, and the scuttlebutt was just horrendous between the city schools and the country schools. And I'm sure you've all heard the war stories as young people. They were true. The city and country, and when it came to this, was almost hatred towards each other. Wabash came back to us not too long ago and wanted to do something for us to go together. And for our own reasons, we chose a different path. But here we are again today, getting ready to make the decision. And I think we need to fully understand where we're about ready to put our tax dollars payment into everybody's pocket and what we're going to have to cough out. And I don't know whether I'm making sense to you or not, but I sense things on the horizon that we're going to have to adjust our lives significantly, probably sometime in this next decade. And where would we be if all of a sudden everything retracted? What would you be telling us at that point? Are we locked into it? The payments going to be forgiven because the world changed for the next few years? And that's really what I wanted to ask. I'm not trying to put a kink in this, because I really believe in what you're doing. But that does concern me. So that's kind of what I wanted to say, and thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dunn. Next, we'll hear from Amy Scully.
I don't know, I don't want to stand up because somebody's gonna have to look at my backside, so. On a sit up real straight. I had a lot of strong feelings that kind of made the announcement of this building project make me step back a minute. And I have had some of the same feelings that Michael had initially, saying, why is it okay now to put this tax burden out there when it wasn't okay before? But here, I have asked a lot of questions when Mr. Kiefaber presented at our school. I'm a second grade teacher at Metro North. My address is 3215 West Division Road. Sorry, I forgot that. When he presented at the school, I had some questions, and being close to retirement gives a person some freedom to speak. Just what's the worst that can happen?
We only have 2 questions. Just to let you know.
So anyway, I asked some of my questions. Some of my questions were answered. I still have some questions about this whole thing and what it will look like, and I don't know the answers to all the questions. These are the things I do know, though. When I graduated in 1981, I graduated with a graduating class of around 120, 125. When my daughter graduated 30 years later from Northfield in 2011, she had a graduating class of around 120. Same ballpark. My nephew is graduating this year from Northfield and has half that size of class. And that is not, I don't know. I've had people say when we went through this whole talk of consolidation a few years ago, I'm not getting off topic, I promise. Don't you want your kids to go to the same kind of school you went to? Don't you want your grandkids to go to the same kind of school you went to? And I said, yes, I do. That is the point. Because Northfield and Southward aren't the schools that they were when Mr. Kiefaber and I graduated from them. I was in a strong band program. I was in a strong choir program. We had a big drama department. Those were my things. And it breaks my heart that those programs are dying at our schools. Not because we don't have kids interested. We don't have enough kids to fill them. And with, with more sports offerings, which we have now, there are more opportunities for kids in sports than there were when I was in high school. But because we have less kids, those sports are pulling from every other program. And we have kids really having a hard time having an identity in high school because they don't have anything. And having an identity in high school is essential. And there's not enough diversity in our schools right now because they're so small for some of our kids to ever find an identity there. And that's a very lonely place to be without that. Another thing that I know is we are not all gonna agree on what is the best course of action. But we can't keep waiting around till we all agree. And we can't keep waiting around till we get our way. And I know there are a lot of sides to this argument. I don't know exactly what side I'm on, but I know that I'm not on the side of doing nothing anymore. We have to do something. Sorry.
Is that your time?
That was your time.
All right, fine. Actually, you're telling me I'm supposed to eat street right now, gotta hang that. Anyway, I'm not okay with just sitting and doing nothing. And I know it is a big financial commitment on the part of the school board, on the part of the constituents of the county. But here's the thing, we've talked about back in the 60s. Well, here's the thing, back in the 60s, our fathers and grandfathers stepped up and said, we're gonna support this because it's the best thing to do. And it's what we need to do to secure the educational future of our kids. And now it's our turn to step up and say, this is gonna hurt a little bit, and this is gonna be scary, but it's time for us to step up and make some hard decisions that will secure the educational future of our kids. And we can't sit back and just worry about what's comfortable for me anymore. We have to look forward, and I know that you might think I have a different perspective just because I'm a teacher. And that does make a difference because I see those babies go through. I saw a little girl this year in my class that has very limited academic potential. She's an amazing artist. And if somebody gets a hold of her and channels her and makes her believe that she can be somebody because of that art skill, even though reading is not her thing, even though math is not her thing, that's gonna change her life. If we miss that and let her fall through the cracks, that's not a burden that I wanna live with. I'm also a grandma now. That has changed my perspective because my baby's going through these schools. And I want the best for her. And I want the best for her friends. And so I feel like we've got to do something. And here's the thing, I've had some trust issues in the past with school board decisions, even with some past administrators. I will just say this out loud, I told them when they were at school, regardless of how I feel about anybody else, I trust these three men. Because they have stood by us, they've made good decisions. I have seen their passion for kids live out in the decisions they make. And I am ready to step up and say, let's do it. I come from a farming family. I was born in McKillop. I know it's gonna hurt, but it's time. We need to do our part and step up for this next generation, like our grandfathers and fathers did for us. That's all I have to say.
Yeah. Well, we'll do it anyway.
No, you're the president.
I just didn't know. So, Ms. Sterling and also Mr. Rigney, and I've heard a couple other people say, again, I want to just reiterate, but why now? Mr. Kiefaber answered that earlier by adding in some additional slides, or an additional slide to his slide deck from last week, but I think we just kind of skimmed over that. First of all, again, even though there's a little volatility in the last week or so, Mr. Elizondo, we are at historically low interest rates. And we do know that because of that volatility, that the building costs are only going to go up. It is time that we step up and do something. This isn't this is something the board could just kick down the road again and let some other board figure out what to do to become more efficient with our building use. But it's time that we look for the next 60 years. And so if we're going to look at that next 60 years, do it before those costs just keep going up. And we're in a lot better situation now than we were the last time we considered anything. My gosh, when I came on this board, we had some problems with our finances. When I ran for school board the first time, we were $500,000 in debt. We now have roughly $9 million in our education fund and almost $5 million in our operation fund. Is that right, Mr. Kuhn? We didn't have that kind of money then. And so there was no way that we would consider taking on additional debt in that situation. But the most important thing is that the retired debt at the end of, why now instead of a couple of years ago, at the end of 2023, pretty much all of our debt, if we did nothing, if we just sat on our hands and said, let it all just go, let the schools go, at the end of 2023, we're out of debt. So the amount of interest that we're going to add back on there, even though it seems astronomical to some people, is not going to put us at a position where it's so much out of our, more than we can do based on what would have been a few years ago if we would have tried this. So I think just because of the interest rates, building's gonna, costs are just gonna keep going up, and the fact that we're pretty much out of debt now, this is the why now. This is the time to strike. And we, as Amy said, we have to quit sitting on our hands. We've got to do something for the children, the students, because it's not just financial it's not just a financial problem that we're fixing by doing this. It's much more than that. It's the educational opportunities that we're not able to give our kids right now. So that's my answer to it. So we'll move on. The next person who requested to speak was Tiffany Hopper.
I'm Tiffany Hopper, 151 State Road 13 South Urbana. I'm a mom of Northfield kids. I'm a taxpayer. I'm a financial advisor. When this first came out, I was, big numbers don't scare me. They don't, I can keep it in perspective. But I know that for a lot of people, they're struggling in this county. The elderly, where we have 40, 50, 60% of the kids in our schools are on free reduced lunches. How is that going to impact their property taxes? It's going to impact them more than it's going to impact me. I told my kids, I don't mind the tax increase, I can afford it, but there are a lot of people out there that can't. We're asking an awful lot of them. I don't like that you guys all use the number 115 million. 115 million plus 70 million in interest, that's 185 million. That's what it's going to cost us to build that school. 185 million, write that down. That's what it's going to cost us over the next 20 years. Not just us. I looked at my senior daughter that's going to graduate this Saturday or this Sunday, and I said, you're going to be paying these property taxes to build this new school. And it is part of our responsibility as citizens in this community to provide a great education for our kids. But a great education doesn't come from one building. A great education can come in a lot of different ways. And the other thing that I want to talk about financial-wise, I assume you guys are assuming a 3% interest rate on the bond issue, approximately? What?
We're at 5%.
You're 5%?
Yeah.
So for every 0.5%, what's it going to add to our interest? 15 million?
It's not gonna add anything coming down. You can never go above the number.
No, I'm saying if you don't get the bond issued at 5%, you have to go to 5.5 or 6%.
Do you want me to answer? Or you want?
Or you can put that in.
I can answer
You're going to have
however you wanna
an
do
FAQ
it.
document later. I mean, it's going to negatively impact it, right?
Oh, that's fine with me.
Yeah.
No, once those max are set, if we can't get into the market at 5%, the bonds can't be sold for that amount. You'll have to do less, or you can't do it.
And that means they might not be marketable.
It won't affect the marketability due to the fact that they're even with that amount of money, their ratios are going to be fine. The market will be there, but the problem is the limit will be set. We cannot exceed that 5%, and at that point they would have to pare back their borrowing. We cannot go back up. We cannot go higher.
How
Searching
would they
the
pare
market.
back their borrowing? Reduce the size of the school?
Well, they'd have to. You'd have to. You'd have to borrow less.
So you're gonna force them to build a smaller school to accommodate. I mean, we're kind of on the cusp there. They're saying we can take 600 kids, but we have 500, and they're trying to attract different kids.
And I have no comment on
Yeah,
what they
well,
do.
I'm just saying that's
but
the
the
reality
size-
of it. Let's think through it.
We set the maximums, and that the maximum payments cannot be exceeded. So
Right.
whatever that will amortize is ultimately
Yeah.
what those limits would be set at.
Yeah.
And reminder that actually is a 10% contingency and also 7% escalation, which is a huge number also, because of what you're saying there, so. just
But
make sure
like you
that-
said at the beginning, it's pretty volatile right now. Things can change in an instant, right? Mike, you said last week something about, somebody asked about the job loss, and you said, well, we'll have people retiring, and so it's not gonna be an issue, we'll end up with enough staff. That's what you said last week. You can go back and replay it. What you're saying tonight is, well, we'll have more offerings and we can keep all the staff. I think that there are gonna be 4 or 5 years in there where people retire. We don't rehire because we know this is coming down the pipeline. And who gets to suffer? Our teachers that are left and the students. So those are things you guys have to consider, all of those things. And it's not just financial. I think we can do better for our kids with a different option. And I think you guys all owe it to us as your voters and as your parents and as the people that you guys go to church and bank with to go out and find us better options. We're not a kid that you're force feeding broccoli to. You better offer us green beans.
Thank you for your comments. Jeremy, wait.
Jeremy Wade, 203 East Kendall Street, Fountain, Indiana. And I didn't bring the cereal sneezer with me this time. Number one, at what time will we get a breakdown of the facilities that you're going to build, add on, or upgrade in the new building? So we know where the costs are going. I know there's gonna be costs of land. I know there's gonna be, the building itself. Are we upgrading sport facilities? Are we putting down AstroTurf? Is that built into all the costs? I mean, at what point in time do we see specifics of this new venture? And also, I heard a lot about utilities. Okay, so if we build where you're saying we're gonna build, what we have existing utilities now, which covers probably gas and electric, but doesn't cover so much. I mean, yeah, you have wells and you have sewer, you have septic or a plant, but when you get that close to town, I'm pretty sure you guys aren't gonna drill wells and you're not gonna have a sewer plant. You're probably gonna pay to have that piped out to you. Have you figured out the cost of that water and sewer that you're gonna be paying every month? And I guarantee you, it's gonna be well more than $1 a kid every month.
Yeah.
So, I mean, was that put in the plans as well?
Not sure if you know, but we actually already do that on the north schools. All that goes to
Okay,
Wabash.
that
So
all
we're
goes to
already-
Wabash?
We're already doing that. So,
Okay.
Right.
But the sewer, right, not the water?
Right.
Okay, but over here, you're gonna have to repipe anyways, and you're gonna have to, are you gonna drill well? I mean, when are we gonna find out the specifics of the building?
Yeah, part
That's
of
the
that,
thing.
yeah, part of that will come later, we don't have drawings, we don't have that, we have, we have the financial part with the square feet and all those different things, with all the.
Are those things that are gonna come out prior to a vote?
Yeah, that would be before November 8th.
Or the only, I mean, my concern is, and I understand you have certain protocol that you gotta do, like putting it out in the plain dealer. Well, I'm telling you that the 2 people that read that don't pass it around. And there's guys like me that actually work and have a bunch of kids that don't have opportunities. But I do get a call when I'm down to 25 cents on their lunch account. So I figured that something could blast out. So, my thing is I would love to go through all of the information before I even dare place a vote on a new school. And not to mention, you're talking about attraction. If you're building a school out here, and I'm a grad of Southwood, and so is my wife, my parents. I mean, my grandmother went to Somerset and graduated from Somerset. So, my family's been on the south end of town, and is it feasible for me to bring my kids all the way across town, or when it's closer for me to go to Oak Hill? You know, you're gonna lose people that way, just by logistics alone. And we're not even talking about the programs that they offer that we may not offer. Because God forbid we work within the community to use facilities, that we have grand facilities in town that we can use and we don't use them. I don't understand that. So that all aside, we're talking about retaining people, and with a with a county that we are 93% higher in Lloyd taxes than 61 counties in the state of Indiana. And we're the third highest. That's amazing to me, that we get to keep people in this county. Because I can move 2 counties to the west and get $1.50 an hour increase in my pay just on taxes. And that's not including what we're gonna have to pay here. Now, I'm not against paying taxes. I pay them all the time. But at some point, there's gonna be elderlies that are gonna have a problem.
Well, thank you for your comment. Just know that obviously, between now and November 8th, a lot of these questions have to be answered, or I would expect a no vote.
Right.
We have a lot more to do between now and November 8th, and that includes a lot more community public meetings like this, so that we can try to bring more of that information to maybe guide you to a better informed yes or no. You know, if you're gonna vote no, you're gonna have better reasons on November 8th than you have today.
I
If you're
appreciate.
gonna vote yes, you're gonna have better reasons than you do today.
Right, I appreciate that you guys got, because when I left this meeting last week, I was super frustrated, because I didn't feel like the transparency was there that needed to be. But I was also not aware that you were gonna take your time and put it in, answer all the questions one time, and I appreciate that, I really do. But you guys have got to do a better job of getting this out in the community so people understand, and you want people to come in and give their input, because that makes people feel a lot better. And it's not as hard a pill to swallow, that's for
Right.
sure.
And I'm not gonna direct this at you, I'm gonna, to anybody, including anybody that might be watching on Facebook. If you've not had an opportunity to go back and watch any of the public meetings that we've been doing since before COVID, please do, because a lot of the questions that have been asked previous to tonight and even tonight have been answered in some of those meetings. And so we just recommend that you go back and a lot more will be answered.
I don't disagree with that at
Right,
all.
right.
But what I didn't disagreeing with is the fact that, look, there's so many people that work different shifts,
Sure.
different, and they don't have, they even may not, I mean, I hate to say it, but they may not have access to the internet or
Sure,
whatever.
I get that.
But we've got to get that a little bit, I mean, we're talking about people thinking their taxes are gonna triple, all total. That, to me, means someone didn't do their due diligence in getting information out.
Okay.
And that's it.
Jeremy, I want to say something first of all, though. I didn't know, my wife's here, but my wife and I get the plain dealer, so I guess we're the only ones that get the plain dealer.
Because I don't know anybody else.
I'm gonna be honest and say I don't.
Is that 2 days a week now?
2 days a week, 2 days a week. But I did want to say, 1980 graduate of Northfield, 1981 graduate of Southwood, so that kind of works out too. 30,
I went to school with your brother, so.
there you go. Yeah, we'll talk.
Yeah.
Here's some things too. Number one, on our website, and I know that's not a call that you would get, but on our website, the tax calculator will be on there if the resolutions are passed tonight. Also, the slideshows that Mr. Elizondo put up, we'll put that on there. Our slideshow will be on there. Also, the frequently asked questions. And so it won't be in the plain dealer, but it will be on the website too. And I know not everyone gets that, but if they want those things, we can print that out for those if they don't have the internet.
It would
all that
definitely help if you blasted that out. I mean, I get a call for some other things. And I don't know if you can do that or not.
Yeah.
But it's a good idea.
Okay.
I mean, people get it.
They put it in the paper.
We all get the paper.
Right, but we can't, that's not part of the legal part of it that we have, they don't have legals like we do, so, but I understand what you're saying, so. There's any code we have to follow, so that's what it is. All right.
All right, well,
Who else
okay,
we have?
we're gonna go ahead and, that was it on the people who requested to speak.
Can I still sign in on
Nope.
that? Mine's gonna be quick, I got no questions.
I'm gonna let you speak, but then make sure you sign.
I will. My first one, because Kevin can answer this one. How much is it per acre? Because I know Kevin's done the number. I don't care about a house. I don't care about a house. I want to know the number. Tell me the number.
I honestly don't know, man. I'm scared to know.
You have an idea. Is it $10? Is it $15? Because everybody's glossing over it. I want to know what it is an acre.
Okay, the other thing I'm gonna ask, and I probably should have asked before, and I thought I don't know why I didn't, we're gonna ask that you direct your comments to the
Okay.
board in general, not to
Yeah,
specific.
Sorry, board, whoever would like to answer it. I'm just curious.
We'll find it out later.
Okay, I'm just curious on that.
Because I think there's a lot of different situations, it kind of depends on
But-
what acre that is, is it a good,
I understand
is it a good clay soil, or is it a good sand soil?
It's all junk out my
Okay.
way, that's why I'm going, that's why I'm going to
Come on,
city.
Matt.
My second question is, and it was already asked, but nobody answered it, if this referendum passes, can you vote on another one? If you pass this, is it a 20-year fix to where you hit a snag like Huntington, can you go back in and get more money, or is this all you can get for 20 years? Can somebody answer that? Because that's been glossed over.
I don't know if I,
So,
did someone ask
You need
that?
What?
I don't know, okay.
He asked that question, if we hit a snag after we
Oh,
do,
in other words, if.
can we vote in on another referendum, or is this 20-year fixed? Is that all we can do?
Not everything has to be done as a referendum. If we decided that we needed to add another classroom,
Sure.
there are maximums that we can borrow, take out bond issues, and we've done it in the past, even when I've been on this board. We can do that.
So this is not gonna be a fixed tax rate for the next 20 years. This can still keep going up. We can take this hit in 10 years, we can take another hit.
It could go down, it could go down too.
I'm sure.
Did you see the graph up there?
I
The
know,
graph up there said it did go down.
I just didn't understand.
You were
that.
laughing about it, but it did say it went down. Is that true or not?
I just want, I don't understand
The other
that.
thing I would like to say though,
Yeah.
for that, is
Yep.
that, yes, we've done general obligation bonds in the last 7 years that I've been on this board. At the end of next year, we're still debt free. So it's not a permanent.
Right.
We have to go and do another GO bond for $1 million to add on.
Yes, $1 million wouldn't bother me. I'm just curious, in 10 years, if we hit a snag like Huntington and they went from 5A to what, 3A after they built, that who's gonna pick up that tab when we have to raise more money? That's my question.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did you get 3 though?
What's that?
I thought you said 3.
Did they go to 3?
No, I said, I think you had 3 questions, you only asked 2.
Oh, my last one was just, I agree with what Tiffany said. If you're gonna talk about a number, make it 180, make it the real number. I think that's a disservice to say 150.
You're insulting the intelligence of your community.
Yeah.
It's in the resolution, so.
that's the problem, legal, the legislature.
I understand, but if we're gonna talk a number, let's talk the real number.
All right. We're gonna move on because we have other business to deal with. So I'd like to thank all of you who participated in the hearing. We do appreciate your interest in wanting to be here and appreciate your comments. But at this point, I am reading from a script, yes, I am. So I want to let you know that the board is going to do everything that we can to be, conservative with our tax dollars. But at this time, I'm going to ask Mr. Kiefaber to summarize the project resolution.
So the project resolution is required when the school is planning to spend more than $1 million for a given facility. It contains the estimated hard and soft construction cost and the cost of the issuance and establishes the total project cost. It also contains the estimated tax impact.
Under unfinished business then, so we've had the second preliminary determination. At this point, we have a recommendation to adopt the project resolution. And I have a motion and second to adopt any project resolution.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Any discussion? If not, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Mr. Kefauver, could you summarize the preliminary determination resolution?
Yes, no, I can't say it. The preliminary determination resolution is required when a school is planning to finance more than certain thresholds on a construction project. It contains the total project cost, maximum annual payment, and lease term, and other financial terms, such as the estimated principal amount and tax impact.
Is there a motion on the recommendation to adopt the preliminary determination resolution? Motion and second to adopt the preliminary determination resolution. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Same sign. And finally, the recommendation to adopt the reimbursement resolution. Mr. Kefauver, could you summarize that for us?
Yes, the next resolution is a reimbursement resolution relating to the financing of the construction project. This resolution permits the school corporation to reimburse itself from bond proceeds for any cash which it might spend on the project prior to the closing on the bonds. It is required by federal tax law in order to preserve the school corporation's ability to reimburse itself.
Is there a motion to adopt the reimbursement resolution as recommended?
I move to approve that reimbursement resolution.
Second.
Motion and second to adopt the reimbursement resolution. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, that finishes the unfinished business for this evening. We have no board policy. We did do public comment there just now. So any items from board members?
Yeah, I apologize, Matt, I don't know me. I do know the agriculture community is about 45% of the property tax debt load for MSD.
And you see most of us up here sitting have to be faced with that same decision. Meaning that we're.
Yeah, I think perhaps, Scott, one thing that should be brought up is what happens, as Mike was saying, if this doesn't happen. We have gone through pretty good studies of what the buildings will need in the next 10, 15 year window of time. And that number is rather tall too. So, not that building a school puts the end to any kind of repairs. You know, we've all had things that are new that require repair. It's part of the consideration.
If there aren't any other items from board members, we are adjourned.